telling people to have family values, and then I don't have family values. I don't want to get into the joke, but like it's like you get a personal trainer and the guy's a little bit of a Blubbosaurus Rex, he's a little bit of fatty, right? And he's like, hey, lift some weights. I'm like, buddy, put the sandwich down and join me over here. You know what I mean? Like, do as I say, not as I do. It doesn't work as a rabbi. You have to do as I do, right? And if I say I do something, I do.
Welcome to the channel Navigating Chabad. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share, because that helps the algorithm bring it to more people, which changes lives and brings Mashiach. And 2 disclaimers. First disclaimer, that this channel is catered to a Chabad crowd, or at least religiously Jewish. And also disclaimer, this channel is not meant to bash anyone or any organization. We're here to change the world for the better, to improve Chabad, which improves the world, and yeah. So sit back, relax, enjoy, soak in all the goodness. Yeah, now.
Welcome everyone. Today we have Reb JR from NCSY of Toronto.
Shalom.
What?
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom. I'm very excited. So you work at NCSY. There's a lot to talk about that. So.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I like to, get to share Torah and share inspiration with other people. I've been working with NCSY full-time for the last 8 years, but off and on for the last 14 years. And it's been one of the most inspiring journeys, not just for the students who I've met, but for myself and my family, just to be working for an organization that really cares about impacting, but also reaching as many Jews as possible to connect them to their Yiddishkeit and to help them feel some sense of identity that is going to help them live a Jewish life.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what inspired you to get into that.
So myself, I'm a Baal Tshuva. I didn't grow up religious. Now these days I look like an old chassid. But back in the day, I grew up in a very traditional but not religious home, in the sense that we knew we were Jewish. We had 2 sets of cutlery, but ate McDonald's. It wasn't like a real traditional Orthodox home, but we had some level of understanding of Yiddishkeit. I didn't go to Jewish day school, and really only in my late 20s. 25, 26, 27, that I start getting a passion for Yiddishkeit. It started in university while I was doing a degree in history. I learned about sort of Roman history, and of course the intersection with Jews, obviously kicking us out of our homeland, destruction of the temple. So that sort of sparked my interest a bit. I did Birthright, classic. I was one of the sober ones, so I actually remembered a bit. And I remember being very passionate at the Kotel, because for me, seeing the Dome of the Rock and the mosque and the Kotel and being in Jerusalem, it was sort of like me opening my history books and walking into them, which made me very inspired. And I remember being in tears before we even got to the Kotel, which was I guess everybody cries at the Kotel.
You have a special soul.
I don't know, but either or, I think the journey started there. But it really took a hold when my wife of last 16 years, Pauline, started doing programs with Aisha Torah. She started going to something called Maimonides, which was a campus class once a week. They got a little stipend, and we were dating, and she was telling me all these amazing things about Yiddishkeit that she was learning. And of course, being the history buff and knowing about my Jewish identity, I was very, very impassioned by it as well. And what was really exciting was the rabbi was young, which I never sort of growing up in conservative shuls, the rabbi was old and not even the shul rabbi was hired, and he lived for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and then we never saw him again. And I didn't have a relationship with rabbis, that's just a thing. And here comes this young guy in his 30s with his wife. And they were cool, and they were asking, cocky, and they talked about other things, and I was like, okay, this is very relatable. And eventually, we started coming out more and often, and then we decided to go on their trip to Israel, which is called the Jerusalem Fellowships, which was a 3-week trip. It was obviously extremely inspiring, and we came back, and again, slowly but surely, started taking on, shmooze and mitzvahs, taking on the idea that kosher and Shabbat would not just be a thing to do, but it would enhance our life and make us have a greater sense of connection to our Creator, but also community and ourselves and our relationship, to raise our family traditionally. So all those values mixed in with the accessibility turned us into, I don't know where we are today, but emissaries for truth and emissaries for godliness.
Now you're on the giving end.
We try our best. It is definitely give and take. We get a lot of nachas from our students, but we try to give as much as we can.
Do they inspire you to do what you're doing now?
So I think there's if you're not inspired by them, then it's very hard to do the work. I mean, that you have to look at each kid, each neshama, right? And you have to find, like, okay, this person has a special chalik, this person has a portion in Hashem's world. He was created. They're all created by God. You know, God has a hand in every single person, every single soul. So obviously they're special, and it's our job to help them unravel maybe something that's twisted. You know, when you have like something that's really knotted and you have to like sit and you have to pull it apart. So I think on some level that's our job, is we untie the knot and allow them to sort of be free. And once you see a student get free and realize I can soar, I can learn, I can grow, I can pray, I can meditate, I can eat kosher, I can live in Israel, I can also do less of it, I can do more of it. It really is beautiful and inspiring, and it reminds us that we also have to be growing at all times. Myself, again, not growing up religious, like the Aleph base was really had to be retaught to me at 27 years old. Learning a Gemara, learning the Talmud, just in general, just being a Jewish person, or a traditional Jewish person, Orthodox person, wasn't natural. And even something I'm very proud of is I even got smicha a couple of years ago. We did a working man smicha through NCSY. I was in the first cohort, and I'm very proud of that. Not so much that I'm called a rabbi, but I'm proud to show my students that even at 38 years old, at that time, I'm still growing, I'm still learning, I'm still trying to access eternity, I'm still trying to have a more of a connection to the infinite.
It's very rare for someone like an adult with a lot of kids to be in a growing state.
I mean, my wife, is a prime example of somebody who also, she became a massage therapist later in our journey, and she also inspires me to keep growing, to keep learning. And I think that's the point of Torah, is that, a person can't perfect themselves overnight. And even if we never get to that point, we always have to be striving for something. And for me, my students are basically receiving the following message. Here you are, and here's where you need to be, right? So if I'm going to tell a person they need to grow, so there's two ways of looking at it. Am I a perfect, finished product? Or am I also growing? Meaning that we should be on a trajectory that we're growing together, right? The greatest thing I can ever show one of my students is, hey, I learned something new, or I learned something from you. One of the greatest things I remember is my rabbi, we would be in a class, we'd be learning a sefer, a book, and he would write down a note based on something we would say. Because it was like, oh, that's a chiddush, that's an insight. And I'd be like, ooh, that's great. If I can make the rabbi think, wow, it's amazing, I must be on a good trajectory.
It doesn't take away your respect from him because you feel like you're on the same level or even greater because you came up with a chiddush that he didn't?
So I think it's different. I think Torah is so expansive. It's like the universe. It's like, what do you mean? Like, of course there's different insights in chidushim. I mean, that's what makes us unique and special. I mean, that's the one thing that I think I learned, is that it's not about knowing everything. I mean, my Rosh Yeshiva, the rabbi who taught sort of, us, is Rabbi Noach Weinberg of blessed memory, the dean and founder of Beishat Torah. And, his whole premise on a most general level is if you know Aleph, and the guy next to you doesn't know Aleph, I mean, you can teach the guy Aleph. Okay, you don't have base yet, but you have Aleph. You can't not teach it.
I had a question to ask.
Do follow up. Yeah.
So from that, giving over to people who are not religious, it could be all ages, but it seems NCSY is specifically teenagers.
So NCSY is primarily a high school organization. However, we have a juniors division, which is grade 6 to grade 8. And then of recent years, and I think this is one of the greatest things that we have, is our alumni department. Our ultimate goal is to help people achieve their potential Jewishly. And in 4 years of high school, we can accomplish a lot, but we can't necessarily create a finished product. And what I mean by a finished product is a person who is comfortable keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher, learning the Torah, deciding what they want to do Jewishly in their lives. Thankfully, we hired a couple of years ago who focuses specifically on our alumni. And we do programs at other universities. So let's say a kid spends 4 years with us or 2 years with us, whatever it is. And then in grade 12, they meet our other the couple, the Krongolds, Rabbi Krongold and his wife, Racheli, who are amazing. And they point them out. What campus you want? Oh, you're at University of Western Ontario. Okay, great. We have a program there, right? We're going to hook you up. Or let's say we're in Queens. Okay, we have a program there. Or here's a kid who's going to Guelph, right? So there's a Chabad shliach there. So let's hook you up with this rabbi, meaning that we become a connector, sometimes running the programs ourselves, but also a connector to other shluchim, other people who are, again, trying to, help people grow and take it to the next level once they get to campus. And I think that in itself, plus the fact that there's additional Israel trips and additional organizations like Olami, and of course Chabad on campus, that really allow these kids to continue their journey. It's not an NCSY journey, it's a Jewish journey. And we get to be, thankfully, these key point people at a certain point. But the greatest success we have is when we see them integrate into another campus model where they're doing Shabbos and doing kosher and challah bakes and looking for Israel trips and looking for opportunities to learn more Torah. So that's also a nuance that we really try to focus on. But altruistically, NCSY is a high school organization.
Right, but you chose that division. So why did you choose that division?
So, my background working anyways in outreach, in Jewish outreach in Kiruv, was actually young professionals. There used to be an organization called JUMP, the Jewish Urban Meeting Place. And what our specialty was taking people who are, I guess, in their mid-20s, almost, I guess, post-campus, or maybe in their masters or whatever they're doing, and running programs for them. It was tremendously successful, tremendously popular, and ultimately, it was great on a communal level, but you did not necessarily see the payros, the fruits of people who were growing into a greater sense of Jewish responsibility, mitzvah observance, and that was challenging. Plus their life.
Why then?
I think, again, unlike, I'm very unique in the sense that, 27 years old, I started becoming more religious and more observant, but most people in their late 20s, early 30s
are very set.
Not only set, but they're really, their goals are shidduchim, like they want to get married, they want to have this.
In a non-religious world?
I would say they want to meet somebody. They want to have meaningful relationships. Now, their version of marriage and family and life might be a little different than the ones we traditionally have, but generally speaking, that was the majority. Meaning that programmatically, what did we do? We did like a lot of shidduchim things, like speed dating and mixers. There was always some Jewish content and learning and kashrus, but it wasn't focused on learning. If it was focused on learning, I think we wouldn't even have had an organization. Nobody would come. So when I am thinking about life and what I should be doing, I always ask my rabbis. I have a couple rabbis that I would ask, and I sat down with one of my rabbis, and we basically, hashed it out. Is this the best place for me? Okay, yes, I'm enjoying the work, and yes,
I'm sure you're good anywhere you go.
We had a great time. Jump days were great days for Rabbi JR. I was pre-Rabbi JR, which is JR. But working with high school kids, you really can have the unique opportunity to help them grow in a different way, because in high school, you really are developing into the person you're going to be. Whereas at 27 to 30, 35, whatever, you're not. You can change, but it's a lot harder. At 14 to 15, you haven't become anybody yet. And so if NCSY and being an NCSYer is what you become, where you care about Shabbos, you care about mitzvahs, you care about learning a little bit of Torah, and you connected to your advisors, you connected to the mashpia, who had you over, you did a Israel trip with us, and maybe considering a gap year, there's a tremendous growing that can go on in 4 years. Whereas with the young professionals, it's like, you don't necessarily have a fixed timeline with them because they just come and go as the programs are made. And if we're popular, they'll come. If we're not popular, they won't. And if they're busy, they'll come. But a kid who's in high school, we can have them in our amazing Torah High program where they get high school credit, right? The kid comes, you got to get the kid for 10 months. And then, of course, he'll come for the next year if we have a great time. And then there's Shabbatons. And then there's an Israel trip, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many vehicles. And I think this is why NCSY is tremendous, that NCSY offers that basically allow a high school kid many vehicles. If it's more social, we have you. If it's more learning, we got you. You know what I mean? We have sort of everything for everybody under the sun that's Jewish anyways. And I think that's why I migrated I really wanted to go back and be with that age group. And I'm very, very happy, as well, because the lifestyle of a high school kid is a little bit more, it's not like the campus, the rah-rah, the big bottles of...
So that's something I want to get into.
Liquor and whatnot.
So because you deal a lot with teenagers, and I think most people say that, in a way, teenagers are the hardest to take care of, because I need to explain that. You know that better than me. At the same time, I'm sure you're very good at it, and you see which parts are challenging, what are the strengths, what's the secret to tap into them. And I think this is something the world who really benefit, and Chabad, that's the channel. So there's a lot to say about this, whatever you want to start from. The pros, the cons, the challenges, the good, the bad.
First of all, let's just say, there's always cons in chinuch, in education. Because,
cons, challenges.
Right. So the challenges of working with teenagers are the fact that the world that they live in is, becoming rapidly more treif than ever.
So you're saying the teenagers now, as opposed to 10, 20 years ago, the Gen Zs.
Look at the access points they have to destroy themselves, right? They have phones and computers, and everything is so much faster and so much more accessible and so unfiltered that they can consume all kinds of things that are not good for their soul, for their body. And not only that, but they'll be convinced that they're true, right? it used to be that a person fought with truth, and that was a big thing, right? Now people don't care about the truth. The one thing I've learned, and by the way, this will get into a pro, by the way, with the teens, is that a lot of them are searching, but it's not so much that they're searching for ultimate truth. I think what a lot of people are searching for these days, because of the nature of the world and social media and all the different things the internet has as a negative, is they're searching for like a place, like an actual makom, like an actual environment where they're not just welcome, because they're welcome in any of these weird, whatever they find, but something where their soul and their body and their mind can all be united. And I don't think the world that's supposed to connect everybody is doing anything more than disconnecting everybody. That's the irony. I actually just taught a class today about this and why the value of Shabbos and whatnot, and the value of the community. I said, I was telling my grade 10, 11 students, you can make your own Shabbos, let's say. Let's say you didn't want to do the Jewish Shabbos. You're that kind of person, right? Let's do it on a Tuesday, right? Who's doing it with you, right? How long can you do it for? Well, what if Tuesday doesn't work out this week? What if you do Wednesday? And then what if you can't do it next week because you're just too busy, right? I mean, that when you fix in time for yourself, self-growth, self-worth, community, feeling loved, it's extremely important. I always tell my students, I meet so many people, that the most beautiful word in the English language is your name, right? Nobody else is like you. I mean, obviously you could have a Tom sitting next to a Tom, but Tom wants to be called Tom, and Tom wants people to know who he is. Tom wants to have his pros and cons about him. He wants to be able to share. Even people who are quiet and more introverted, they all want to share. They all want to be loved. They all want to feel that someone cares about them. And I think that at NCSY, besides educating our teens about rituals and this and that, the fact that we exist and we have our amazing advisors who are trying to relate to them, to have a coffee date, to talk to them, just like be a shoulder to cry on, so to speak, not literally, is so crucial, because their identity is really in crisis. Yes, they'll learn math, and yes, they'll learn English like they used to, but they don't know at all who they are. And I think that that's part of what we're doing now. And I think it's something that we do very well, because we create a community, we create an environment. I would say, when you look at these campuses, if you go out of town, right? If you don't have a Chabad Shliach or somebody out there, I mean, these kids are basically going into the desert again. They have nothing. It's dire for spirituality, for meaning, for community. Yes, they'll join Delta this, or yes, they'll be in that club or that club, but look at the world around you. The world is draining people of themselves and presenting them literally a filtered version of themselves. Like literally, like you people nobody knows what anybody looks like, because every picture they put on the internet is a filter of a filter of a filter of a filter. And I think in some sort of, metaphorical way, that's what we're getting. We're getting kids who are being told that you are not good enough. Let's put a filter on you, right? Let's put another filter on you, and let's filter what you say, and let's get you some cool catchphrases and get you some weird lingo, and let's get you to say this and listen to that and do this. But there's no meaning. There's no purpose. It's a purposeless, devoid action. Whereas we have 3,000 years of tradition, 3,300 years of tradition of Masorah, of unbroken chain, of identity, of love, of community, of really feeling like a family. Besides the fact that the Jewish people are an eternal nation, when you look locally, you seriously can see, once they start joining, quote unquote, the NCSY community, which is really just an outpost of the Jewish community, the Orthodox community in general, the kids feel a greater sense of accomplishment when they do something, a greater sense of self. Friendships are becoming more long-lasting, more meaningful. People aren't just texting anymore. They're actually going out and meeting for coffee. Sometimes I see my students and they're out for a coffee with each other. I'm like, wow, you guys aren't FaceTiming, you're not Zooming each other, you're actually meeting each other? Hallelujah, what a great situation. And I think that is a tremendous thing that you can do with a young high school person that you might not be able to do with somebody who's had 10, 15 more years of absorbing the, let's say, non-kosher environment that the world is presenting for most people.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. So you spoke, so what you said, it sounded more neutral. You're saying about how they don't have an identity and that's what you give them. So, but that's with anyone. What's unique with the teens, no?
Well, I mean, the difference between a teen and an adult is the fact that, again, things are not developed yet, right? Like it's like, a baby, in utero, like it's not, it's not fully developed yet. And I think, on a science level, I think, frontal lobes and brains, and they don't know who they are. They're not going to run to school. They don't know what they'd be for People don't want to know for a living. They don't want where their education is going to go. So being a part of that planning process and helping guide them, presenting them the option of Shabbos, the option of kosher. I just literally spoke to a couple girls on Wednesday. Rabbi JR, can you sign this letter for us? We want to be on the kosher residency at university. Of course. What kind of question is that? Well, we didn't know if you would sign. I'm like, well, do you want to eat kosher and do Shabbat? She said, of course, we want to be near the Chabad house so we can do Shabbat. I'm like, well, what's the question, right? And I said to myself, would they be asking me that, if we didn't have class for the last 9 months together? Maybe that wouldn't have mattered to them. Maybe that 9 months of class once a week, just hanging out, learning about their unbelievable traditions, and getting some insight from the rabbi has maybe helped shape that, created that traditionalism into something that's active. I think that's another thing I would say, that a lot of people who are traditional keep those traditions dormant. And if anything, NCSY, we're awakening. It's like a volcano that needs to erupt, and we're awakening their spirituality. We're awakening them to an eruption of Jewish identity that they may not have, or may stay dormant until they're 28, 29, 30, and then they would meet me at a different time in their life, and it'd be far more difficult, more challenging for them to imbue Jewish tradition, because now they're stuck in their world of, well, I only date these types of people, or I only have that going on with myself, or they found their communities and their little micro identity. But again, it's all null and void if they don't have that sense of eternity to themselves, because then it's like, well, if it's not this, I'll be that, and if it's not that, I'll be that. Like they change like the weather, unfortunately, in Canada, right? Whereas a teen, again, we can help develop them and help them take responsibility, which is a very big and important word, for their own Judaism. And if you do it at a young enough age, then you can really see a person really develop. And we see it. I mean, we see it in our work. We see the kids year after year developing, growing, and then we have people who came to us with green hair and all kinds of mishigas, now sitting and learning koilel, making a chasana, right? Before they were going to have a wedding, now they're having a chasana, right? That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have dozens of amazing staff at NCSY that spent time and helped this person grow and helped them develop. And when you see at the end, even if it's just that gleaming moment, it's like, wow, you feel such a sense of accomplishment, and you feel such a sense of this work is meaningful, right? And I always say we do it for the kids, right? We're doing it for the kids. They need us, and as long as we've got breaths and we've got minds and koach, we should be giving everything we can to them, right? It's our job. Kol ravim zelazeh.
You think whatever you're saying obviously has something, but how much of it can you say applies to now the Orthodox community, teenagers, and even if you know whatever you know about Chabad?
Well, first of all, I know about Chabad. Chabad to us in our home are our neighbors, literally, but also our family, right? We have such a close connection to people who are Chabad Shlichus. Myself personally, Rabbi Mordechai Silverberg at University of Western Ontario is one of the great mensches of all history that I've met. We do a program out there. I actually ran it myself for campus, and it was kids who did NCSY who are now at Western. Now, I only had a few dozen students, maybe at the most at the time. It was 7 or 8 years ago, and I was going to start a learning program, and we were going to learn, off campus somewhere. But I felt that it was necessary, if I'm going to go to Western, that I should speak to the shaliach there, because it's his makom. It's, in my opinion, it was his territory. So I called Rabbi Silverberg and I introduced myself. We had met a couple times before, but I reintroduced myself. And the first thing he basically said to me, he says, "I am a shaliach for Hashem, and Hashem has given me everything. God has given me everything. My center is your center, because it's a center for godliness. And if you want to bring godliness to our campus, you're welcome. Here's the key." He gave me the key. That's the kind of guy he gave me, right? Das is a mensch, as they say in Yiddish. This is a good person. And we've had a great relationship with him for 8 years now. And the program's expanded and getting bigger and bigger. And it's only because he allows it, right? I mean, again, that's the nature of when you think about people, who are like-minded, there's very little things that you think are different, right? Meaning that if we're both saying that we are servants of the Almighty, what kind of hat I wear, how long my coat is, what the page number is in my sitter, where this is versus this, it starts not being relevant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You have a common goal.
Right. I mean, that we don't look at each other, obviously, on an inquisition level. I would ask questions. I've always been interested in Tanya. I'm actually in a Tanya shir with Joey Newcomb. Shout out Joey Newcomb. And I'm trying to learn it. Okay, I'm not so great, but I'm saying we are Jews. We're emissaries of God, right? And so that's all I see him as, right? Is he a Chabad shlich? Yes. He also is a friend and a mensch, and that's the most important thing, right? If a person's a friend and a mensch, okay, then we can start breaking down the interesting nuances, maybe ask some questions. A person's Sephardi, how's the rice taste on Pesach? We have what to talk about. But ultimately, a person was standing at Har Sinai with me at some point many millennia ago, and we probably were next to each other and probably like, okay, I'll see you in a few millennia, and we're gonna be partners. And I think that's the beautiful thing that I've experienced with Chabad on campus. My wife is also zocha to work for the Plotkins, at Chabad of Markham, which is an amazing environment. Talk about a place where two people who are such chashuv people, such really holy, tremendous people, giving themselves to a community, right? A lot of South African Jews there. My wife was working in the office there for a few years, and just even to this day, which was it was well over a decade ago, my wife worked there. She feels very connected to the Rebbitzin. If she ever has a class online or at that shir, she always listens to it. Rabbi Plotkin always gives me a shalom aleichem. These are das is a mensch. These are good people. So our experience and just the environment here, living in Thornhill, where you have the Chabad outpost here, and lots of neighbors who are Chabad Hasidim. It's always great to shmooze and to catch up. And when they hear that we're having guests and we have all these people over, that you can see there's like a twinkle. They're so happy. And of course, we get to share the nachas when they have students and people growing. As the Mishnah Avos says, and Pirkei Avos says, you should have talmidim harbe. You should have lots of students, right? It's not easy to have lots of students, but if you're able to do it, and if you're an educator, there's nothing greater than having lots of people come over and want to eat your food and hear what you have to say, and then turning around and seeing them raising their families Jewishly. It's a tremendous source of nachas, and I think that's one thing we definitely share in common.
That's really beautiful. So it seems to be, we're getting along. We're getting along very nicely.
Why not?
It's very, very nice. You mentioned about bringing over students to your house. So how do you balance the importance of family and shlichus, specifically when you bring it into your house, which then your family is exposed to the outside world?
So it says, in the parsha of Lech Lecha, so Avraham Avinu, Abraham, right, is told by God, Lech Lecha, go for yourself, right? Go from your land, go for your town, right, and go from your Beis Avicha, for your father's house, right? And then it says, Avraham went from Haran, right, to Eretz Canaan, Israel, yeah? And he brought with him his wife and his nephew, Lot, and it says he brought nefashos, right? He brought souls with him, right? Now, I assume he didn't bring a bunch of ghostly, ooh, Avraham, we're hanging out with you. What is the Torah telling us? He had Talmidim,
right?
Because Avraham was the first ethical monotheist. He was the Isha Ivri, right? He was on one side of the river and everybody else was on the other side of the river. There were a few monotheists, but there weren't people that were telling other people the value and the benefit and the truth of monotheism, right? We had Shem V'Aver, we had other people that knew that there was only one God.
But they were in their cave.
But they were hiding out. They were low key, at least according to our Torah. Avraham was different. Avraham looked into the world, inferred that there must only be one creator, one Borei Olam, and not only that, was like, well, I've got the ticket. I've got the lottery ticket here. Only this lottery ticket is not a regular lottery ticket. This lottery ticket is much more like a flame. Because the difference between a lottery ticket and a flame is as follows. If you have a lottery ticket that has $1 million, and let's say I want to share it with you. So 50-50, but if I give you money, I will have less money. I might be happy about that, but I'm going to have less. But when a person has fire, right, and a beautiful torch, and you have an unlit torch, and I give you a light with my torch, I don't lose any fire, but you gain fire, right? Avraham was a torch. He was a light in a dark room. And so what Avraham was doing was he was building a world, and he had these nefashos with him. So I'll get to your question. So as Avraham leaves Haran, he has nefashos. He has some kind of talmidim with him. However, when his son to his wife Sarah was born, right? Yitzchak, we don't hear about nefashos anymore. He has his servant, but we don't hear about the nefashos. And I think that there's a lesson in chinuch there. That yes, we have to be overly available for our students, but not at the expense of the greatest people in our lives, which are our family, right? If my kids are being second fiddle to the students, or they're being neglected, God forbid, then that's an issue. And by the way, that's a tremendous challenge for Makarivim, people who work in Kiruv outreach, and I think people who are very passionate about anything. I think if I had a passion about a business, or I worked late nights as a lawyer, right? What is the home life balance supposed to look like? And I think for a lot of people who are in the business of inspiration, it's very hard because on one level, you go out and you inspire people, and then you come home and you just want to be Tati. You want to be a normal guy, right? But maybe the Kinderlach want a little bit of that, Rabbi JR vibes that they saw in the Shabbaton, Abdullahs or whatever, right? So, and also, where's my energy at, right? I spend the whole day working, but you could be doing anything. You could be working in a steel mill, and you come home, you got to give to your kids. Am I perfect at it? Nope, not even close. But I know that I have to work on it. And I think it's the most important thing. If you're building a family, you have to remember that your family comes first. And that's the reality. And it doesn't mean you can't be an amazing outreach worker, but you can't do it at the expense of your family. You can't make korbanos, as we say. We can't sacrifice that which we, have created literally in a partnership with the Almighty for the potential of our students, right? And I would even say, even more so, how inauthentic would my students look at me if I, not God forbid abuse, but if I neglected my own family? I mean, that isn't what I'm telling them is to have a family and take care of your family. And now Rebbe's not taking care of his family. Again, it's the idea of getting smicha at 38. Mm-hmm. Is that I'm telling you to grow. I'm telling you to be a better person, but I'm not working on myself. How does that work? Right? If Torah is infinite and it has infinite ways to learn and have nuances and insights, and I haven't learned all of them, I can't possibly say that I have. So then I have to be growing. But in the same sense, if I'm telling people to have family values, and then I don't have family values, I don't want to get into the joke, but it's like, you get a personal trainer and the guy's a little bit of a blubbosaurus rex, he's a little bit of fatty, mm-hmm. right? And he's like, hey, lift some weights. I'm like, buddy, put the sandwich down and join me over here. You know what I mean? Like, do as I say, not as I do. It doesn't work as a rabbi. You have to do as I do, right? And if I say I do something, I do it. If I'm saying I'm davening, then I'm davening. If I say you have to have intention, you have to have intention. I can't live a life where I'm basically two people. I'm a messenger of something, but I don't live that message at home. I think that's counterfeit. And I think eventually your students will catch up to you and see it, but also they'll destroy your family. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. So it's a very important thing. And I would say to any young makaravim, any young people who want to go into chinuch, you should make that cheshbon. You should make that analysis. You should make that accounting, because any job, doesn't matter what you do, has to have a work-life balance. You have to have downtime. You have to have boundaries. You have to have things that allow you to have tzipuk nefesh, like joy. And if you don't do that, then again, you run the risk of harming your relationship with your wife, which is the most important relationship, and your children, which is one of the most important relationships you can have ever in your whole life. So be mindful of that. It's very tough. And it's very tough when you're inspiring people, because you mamish feel that limelight, and mamish, but you have to make sure that you're not doing it at the expense of the people that matter most.
Well, yeah, that's very important. I definitely agree. So going back to teenagers, and if you can also focus more on the religious crowd. I mean, I believe you also have your own teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And
somewhere.
You're familiar with
anything to do with me.
Other Orthodox teenagers.
I've met a few.
So, as I said, I believe it's a big struggle these days. And again, you probably know better than me, and that's why I'm asking you. Mm-hmm. You deal with these teenagers.
Sure.
No, non-religious ones, but I'm sure it's somewhat related. What are tips you can say to either to happy, healthy, and religious?
So, I mean, I think I just to preface, I worked with boys with learning challenges for many years as one of my other jobs. We had a beautiful yeshiva at the Bayit for boys who were off the beaten path. They weren't necessarily off the derech, as they say, but they were definitely having some challenges. The one thing I learned from them is that they don't necessarily want to be in a box. They don't want to be out of the box, in the sense they don't want to be not religious. But they couldn't find a way to fundamentally be the religious of their community, of their school, of their neighborhood.
How much percentage do you think this is? It sounds like what you're saying. I know a lot of people like that.
I would say, in the world that I traverse in, and I can't speak to places I don't, so mm-hmm. I would say there are some environments which are quote unquote Orthodox, where I would say 6 to 7 out of 10 kids are not practicing orthodoxly, either kosher, Shabbos, some level of knowledge of the Torah, reading and learning Torah, and there's various reasons for that. I don't think there's one thing to pinpoint, but I would say in NCSY we have an organization called Sparks, right? And the Sparks organization, which was started by Rabbi Glenn Black, the CEO, was to help stop the tide of, sort of kids falling through the cracks in the Orthodox world, boys and girls.
That's totally different angle, because the rest of it is more people who grew up non-religious, but now they're making a program for religious people to stay in the tide.
Well, think about it, right? The taivas, the desires, are probably greater when you are greater, right? I was in a call with Rabbi Moshe Mordechai Lowy, the head of the Aguda, and a Goyen Gadol Torah and a leader of the Toronto community for decades now. And he made a remark about something. It was a joke, but it was very, very intelligent. Somebody had said, my Yetzer Hara, my evil inclination is massive. And so Rav Lowy said to the guy, he goes, well, you must be a big tzaddik then, right? Meaning that the greater a person is, the harder they fall when they go down, right? You see this, Nebuch, Hollywood, whatever, but just think about it this way, right? If, sorry for the sports analogy, I don't know if you follow sports. I was a big sports broadcasting guy back in the day. If LeBron James or Michael Jordan, you pick your super athlete, is at the line, shooting the foul shot, the cameras are on them, if they miss, the scrutiny is far greater than if the guy who's the 14th guy on the bench misses, because he's expected to miss, and doesn't have that, it's not his thing. But when the superstar does it, right? So on that vein, when a person has a lot of Torah and they grow up in a world of Torah, so it is true their Yetzer Hara is greater, right? They have the things they might be challenged with might be not the same as those in the secular world, but the fall can be very great if they choose. Meaning that if a person is growing up, let's say, religious, but chooses to give in to certain taivas, certain desires, their drop-off, right, will be far more, there'll be far greater ramifications in the negative than a secular kid who might be normalized to these types of actions. I don't want to get into it because I don't know what the crowd's like here, but let's just say drug use, right? Like, a public school kid, trying drugs or whatever for the first time, it's socially normal, right? And obviously everybody's different, but there's an acceptance of it, right? In the Jewish schools, sadly, maybe it's becoming more normalized. A person does something like that, or they, smoking, and then moves to this, moves to that. There's a far greater sense of impact, but also like everybody's like, oh, we don't do that here, right? And then you feel, oh boy, I'm not accepted here, I'm not welcome here. Right. And then maybe the people who give me the access to the drugs or alcohol, whatever it is that I'm doing, well, they make me feel good and they accept me, so I'm going to start hanging out with them more, right? Meaning that, again, high school is a very challenging time because I always say to my high school kids, I said, you've mastered being a little kid and you're the worst adult, right? Meaning that you can ride a bike, you can dress yourself, you can even use some money and order some food, but you can't make the decisions of an adult. You might not even be able to drive a car. You cannot buy a house. You cannot run a life because you're still a child, right? You don't even have a degree, right? You are literally in grade 10 math. Where do you go off? Saying, I know I'm so worldly, right? So when you've mastered being a kid but don't know how to be adult, you're in this sort of murky middle. That's what a high school kid is. And so the value of mentors and the value of having somebody in your life is helping guide you into the direction where you are going to have a good adulthood, right? Having an amazing teenagehood, like you partied and had a great time, usually means your adulthood might not be so great. It doesn't mean you can't have fun. But I'm saying if you juice up and use up all that party time, right, and you just do everything but go to school and but have good values and but have a community and but have good friends, then you get energy. What happens? You get into your 20s and you don't know what to do with yourself. And you get into your 30s and you're like, I'm in the middle of life. Like I don't have a real profession. I don't have a real derech. But I still. And in that, there's a difference between religious and non-religious. Well, I would say like this. I would say that happens to anybody. No, the difference is when a person who's not religious, they have even more of a setback, because if you leave the religious community and you try to assimilate or affiliate with the non-religious or not the Jewish community at all, then what are you, right? You're just a regular person. You're just into the challenge of life. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying bad or good about it, but you just are just another fish in the sea, right? Being a Yid is a very special thing, and it's a very special responsibility. And that's why, again, I think the mashal is or the parable is that a person falls, from a small hill, so they might sprain their ankle and hurt themselves. When you fall off a cliff, you can die, right? And a Jew spiritually is on a cliff, right? We're on a very high level spiritually from the day we're born. We're given a bris milah or having our name in the shul, and our whole life there's kedusha around us, hopefully. And the school provides kedusha, and the rebbes and the moras, they give you kedusha, they give you holiness. And if somehow, because if it's a learning challenge or something in the home, and there's millions of reasons why a person falls through the cracks or feels less connected, and certainly just being a teenager and being, someone who's learning how to make decisions, you can make the wrong ones if you don't have the right mentors, if you don't have the right influences in your life. And what we see, or what I've seen, is that kids who are off the derech, I hate that word, but whatever, kids who have left sort of the traditional path that their parents have raised them on, is that it is very challenging for them on a double level, because A, they are living sort of a double life, and B, they don't really fit in with the secular world because they kind of have that, and then in order, what do you usually do to fit in with a crowd that is not your crowd? What do you do? I would think you try to over impress them, right? Maybe do more, maybe be more of a cool guy. So if they're doing one cigarette, maybe you'll do two. I don't know, I sound like an old grandpa here, right? But like I'm saying, if they're doing drugs, maybe you'll do more. If they're drinking, you'll drink more, right? It's like an initiation, into the gangs, right? They give you initiation, so they got to show you. I think it's the worst thing in the world. It's very sad, but it's the reality, because every kid, every person, I mean, we were young once too, we were in high school once too, starts to want to be an adult at this age, 14, 15, 16, 17. You want to be an adult, so you want to make your own decisions. And sometimes you want to go against your parents or go against what you did. So who's going to be there to catch you when you fall? Who's going to be there to remind you of your purpose? Who's going to be there to say, I love you no matter what, right? Number one, it's going to hopefully, God willing, be your parents. And number two, by the time you're in high school, if you don't have them, you should have them, but you need mentors. And I don't mean like a kid who's a year older than you who teaches you like the ways. I'm talking about a person who can give you insight on how to live a great life. Mishnah says, "Asay l'charav," right? And konei chaver, you have to make yourself a rabbi. Why does the Mishnah say "asay l'charav"? Why, shouldn't it be konei harav? Shouldn't you buy a rabbi? You go to shul, you pay the membership, you get the rabbi, right? The guy in the pulpit. But I think for our students, it's very obvious. Asay l'charav means you got to go after it. You got to go after these questions. You got to find someone who gives you the answers that help you grow. And make for yourself a rabbi means you have to make the relationship work, right? A lot of students will say, you don't call me. You don't call me. Baruch Hashem, I'm very lucky to know many hundreds of people, maybe thousands at this point. I cannot possibly keep in track with all of them, but anybody who knows me knows that I'm very quick to answer messages, and I'm very, quick to wish a happy birthday and to say a shalom aleichem to people. You have to want it. You have to desire it. And I think one of the things I teach my students is to desire a mentor, even if I'm not the mentor. Halavai, I should be, for a lot of people, but I really don't care if it's me. I care that they look out for people who are going to help them become amazing human beings. And again, NCSY, we have an amazing staff. We have rabbis, we have young women who have been to seminary for a year, 2 years, who are like really the lifeblood of our organization, which we call our advisors, but they're really much more than that. They're the foundation of all these kids' early growth as Jews.
You're saying the young...
we're Madrachim, we call them advisors. They are so important to our organization because they are this sort of relatable friend who's only a few years older than them, who can, again, be that shoulder to cry on, answer the questions, but also just be like, let's just go for a coffee and talk about our nails, right? Let's just talk about sports. So and I think this is a very good insight for Makarav and people who are in outreach or education at all. It doesn't always have to be about Torah. I'm not saying, God forbid, everything's about Torah. Hashem's world is perfect and infinite, and Torah is everywhere. But you don't always have to be talking about Torah to be growing somebody. In fact, it's the opposite. If all they see you is someone who's just trying to teach, preach, then they're like, okay, we don't have a relationship. Our relationship is based on the fact that you only want to teach me Torah all the time, and you don't really care about me. Because sometimes I don't want to learn Torah. Sometimes I want to talk about my nails. Sometimes I want to talk about my boyfriend. Sometimes I want to talk about the game that I watched, whatever. You have to allow people to be people. And the more they feel comfortable being themselves, guess what? The more Torah they're going to learn. So you win anyways. It's a double win.
So all of this, I think you as, and I say you as in, you and also the NCSY, you do an amazing job on, you can call it outreach, those who are not religious. And I think it's amazing work. Don't get me wrong. It just personally, I feel like, and that's again, I want to refocus this on what you call the opposite, inreach, or on our community, those who are religious, because I feel like we're doing amazing. And I don't know, we shouldn't stop it, but we have to also strengthen our foundation, our own community.
Sure.
And isn't it like, I don't think we accept and we nurture our teenagers like we do a non-religious. What do you have to say about that?
I have no criticism of the yeshivas. I didn't grow up in them, and I'm just so young in my own,
No, as a parent, we're not the issue.
But I'm saying that the school system, which is supposed to be the backbone of this, mixed with the parents, right? We have two partners. It's the parents and the schools and the mosdos. Are the schools catering to people who are at risk of falling through the cracks because of something going on at home, or something with learning disabilities, or something with this or something with that? Are they aware of it? Are they thinking about it? Are they working with it? I can say with the schools that I know, I think there's work being done, but there's also people falling through the cracks. Is that because the schools don't care? No, it's because that people fall through the cracks because of all kinds of reasons. Now, what responsibility does the community have to these kids? I would think it's everything, right? It's everything. Now, that being said, the sofer is not a moel, right?
We all have our job. I'm just saying, like, at the very least, the same way we treat the non-religious to be the religious. And if anything, like you said before, the family comes first. Like our own chevra come first. I just don't understand why.
I think one thing I would teach a young family about picking schools is to make sure that the school works with the ashkafas at home. You don't want to go into a school where the kid comes home and they're more religious than their parents, right? You don't want that to happen. You want the kids to grow up, obviously, to have greater, Torah knowledge, and of course to be great scholars and to be very modest and to be all the amazing things you name it. But I think people have to pick schools at an early age, at an early time in their child's youth, that suit them hashkafically, that they know that the kid is going to do well socially with the kids in the school, that the values at home are similar to the values at the homes of the people that go into school. Those things are very important. Once you whittle that down, then again, if you encounter a child who has a challenge in the home, I don't think there's anything more valuable to them, right, than knowing that they count and that they matter, no matter what decisions they make, even if they're, let's say, contrary to Torah. And let's say nothing, God forbid, drugs, alcohol, whatever. But let's say they don't feel as observant, or they don't feel as connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Again, keeping in mind they're kids. So what do? We shun them. You can't shun them. You can't just well, it didn't work out with this one. Goodbye. It's not like a bird who kicks its. You see these videos with the birds. They have a bird, and the one's a little weak, and they toss it out to die.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, whatever. I gotta watch these things. I gotta keep up with the times. You don't do that to your kids. Who kind of person would you be? So what do you do? So I think that I don't know what we do about this problem, but I would say that if we all, on an individual level, did our most diligence with our kids, hashkafically, and I think also bring into the home a true love of Torah. One of my neighbors, Rabbi Goldwasser, used to give a shiur, a class, and he would call it Jolt. Joy of learning Torah, right? It's cute, right? Mm-hmm. But seriously, so I work in Associated Hebrew Schools in grade 6. You know what I read on the board? Jolt, every day. Joy of learning Torah. There has to be joy in your learning of Torah. And you have to make that something enjoyable. So even if they're a little weaker when it comes to reading psukim, or they don't have they're not understanding on a certain level, don't take the joy out of it from them. And as long as the school, as long as the family and the environment doesn't remove the joy out of the kid who's, let's say, weaker, or a girl who doesn't, again, whatever, I don't go to girls' schools, but my daughters, they have a sheet, they don't know the sheet so well, but you don't get rejected for that. It's just like anything. You have to work on it, get better at it, but you can't make it an all or nothing proposition, right? Because if you make it an all or nothing proposition, if a kid feels that if I'm not exactly like this, then I'm nothing, then it's a very, very dangerous situation we're in. And I think on some level, that is what's going on. I'm not pointing a finger or saying that I can identify a cause and effect, but I think when a person feels like if I am not exactly like this, and they can't be, then they just run away, right? And I think that, by the way, shkoyach to Chabad, I feel like Chabad families, the ones I know, they do a better job of this. At least from what I see, is I think they're just more chilled. There might be such a thing as a box of Chabad. I don't know what the box is, because maybe it's different for everybody. The one thing I see is they're more laid back. This is going to be a hot take. Can I say a hot take?
Please.
Is it going to bother your audience? If I get,
I don't know what you're going to say, but
Chabad are the most amazing Hasidim. But I would call them, and I don't mean hashkafically at all, the modern Orthodox of Hasidim. And I don't mean that they modernize their orthodoxy. I mean that they present themselves in the world as if they're part of the world. I mean it in the most complimentary way. So if it comes off the wrong way, please send your hate mail somewhere else. But I mean that I don't mean modern, I don't even know what the word is, but they just seem that they're more contemporary. They're more with it.
In the Chitzeniistic way, they seem to be modern.
I'm saying a guy is wearing, he's got like a blue shirt on, I'm saying like, we're not sitting in a box over here. And I think that people can benefit from knowing that you can be tremendously religious and a chassid, right? And a chassidish person, and also wear a blue shirt. I really do think that is missing in pockets of the Orthodox community. It doesn't matter what you define or label them as, but I think people need to know they got to be more chilled. And I don't mean like lazy or negligent with halacha, God forbid. I'm not implying that, but I think that people have to know that their kids are in a generation that is trying to suck the life out of them, right? It is so dangerous out there, spiritually now and physically, as it's turning out, which is a whole other topic. But spiritually, it has never been more dangerous because it's so safe. Although again, it's not being so safe. The internet is so. I mean, it's like I had a great mentor, Rabbi Rabinowitz, told me. Yisrael Rabinowitz, he's a great guy, NCSY principal many years ago. Told me, the internet has created a monster because he gave a story. He said it's a made up story. Imagine a kid has this like weird thing where he pulls the legs off of frogs. Right? It's weird, right? They don't do that stuff. It's not nice, right? And he does it every now and then, but he knows it's, he does it in private or he hides and does it. He goes to camp one year and he goes by the lake and he wakes up at 5 a.m. and he pulls the legs off of frogs because he likes it. It somehow gives him a pleasure. It's creepy, okay? This is a creepy analogy. Sorry. And for his 16th birthday, his parents say, you know what? We're going to buy you an iPhone, right? And we're going to give it an unlocked iPhone. We're going to give you the Wi-Fi to the house. And what's the first thing he does? Goes onto Google, rips legs off of frogs, types in, and pages and pages and videos and chats and groups pop up. And what does it do? It validates it. It makes it something that he knew was wrong or maybe probably needs some therapy for. Now he's like, it's not only not wrong, it's right. Look at all these people who do it. It's totally normal. Now I can watch it and I can do it and I can, you can see where that can go. And I think that's the big challenge, right? That people have is that what am I getting access to? What am I getting exposed to? What am I seeing on a daily basis? There's a big community now that's starting to go to flip phones, to go to kosher phones, right? Why? Because filters and all these things they're not enough. And you can see it. I see it in the schools. Like my grade 6s they're sitting on their smartphones and they have their ear things in and they're on their watch phones. And it's like every single minute of the day is exposure to the internet, which we know it can be very dangerous and very challenging. The Yetzer Hara lives, within all of us. And since we all have that, we're all going to eventually, especially at an explorational age, look to see things, right? And these are not things that people should see. And I think that also is a dangerous thing in the schools because the kids are, usually not so exposed. And if they all of a sudden get, let's call it overexposure to anything, it can really set them back. It can really traumatize them. And then you can see the ripple effects of how it affects their personality and their development and growth as a young adult, which again, I'm not holding, but I'm starting to experience this and learn about it more. And I definitely think the perils of the internet far outweigh the benefits that people think they get out of them, for sure. We were fine without it. I lived in a world without the internet and I was all right. My parents were able to find me. I was able to go in the streets. I could make a phone call by putting a quarter into this thing called the telephone. You pull the thing, you press the button, and you're talking to somebody, right? It was okay. People were fine, right? I think people are less fine now than they were 30 years ago. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just living in my own delusion. But
everyone has their opinion.
I think people are less fine. I see grade 6s, 7s, and 8s. They don't seem so great. They're nice people, but they're struggling. They're struggling with their identity. They're trying to jump to adulthood very quickly, well before they need to be, right? And I think that's also another problem, right? Is you have a 14-year-old kid who's exposed to the behaviors and patterns and things that adults do at 14 when they're not an adult yet, and they try to replicate that in their own lives. It's only going to be bad. It's not going to be good, right? You know what I'm saying? That's very dangerous. So I think that besides having clear boundaries with what people are exposed to, besides matching the home spiritually with what the schools are doing spiritually, but also angling your children when they're young towards friend crowds that are going to be of like-mindedness. That doesn't mean you can't have friends who are not, but don't dump them in a crowd of people who are, let's say it's television, and watching television, you don't watch television. What do you think your kid's going to want to do? They don't want to watch television. So again, it's a parent's choice because we're in charge for quite a bit. 0 to 11 or 12, 13, 14 years old, we're very in charge. And then when they get older, if you've given them the right foundation of making decisions, hopefully they will. It doesn't mean they will. It just means you've done your best. And then you have to daven. We always have to daven. If you're not davening, then you're not davening for your kids. I don't know who you're davening for. I daven for my kids every day. I cry more for my kids than for anything, my family. It's the most important thing. So ask Davishter, ask the Almighty. Help me. Give me an eitzah. Give me something, right? Just give me something. That's all I ask for, right? And I think when people realize the greatest partner they'll ever have in life is that your Father in heaven. It's not your business partner, or even your marriage partner. But if you can ask the Avinu Shebashamayim, who wanted you to be in this world and created the world for you, for help, what's he going to do? Say, no, I don't want to help you. I made you a yid for a reason. I made you to have challenges, and I want you to overcome them. So here's the Torah HaKadosha, here's our holy book, and here's prayer, and here's meditation. Go for it, right? Work on yourself. And then you work on yourself, your kids will see that you're working on yourself, they'll work on themselves. I can't guarantee it's perfect, but I think there's a recipe there, something they could cook up.
Wow, Chaim, that was a lot.
Yeah, sorry. A lot in the glass here.
No, a lot packed into a short amount of time.
You'll edit it.
That was big. How much more time do we have?
Whatever you want, infinite.
Okay, great. Personally, I do have a different approach to internet and smartphones. I don't disagree with you that there's a lot of harm, and at the same time, it says in Tanya, like, this world is Rubi K'chol. I believe that's the way it's going to be until Mashiach comes. Mm-hmm. So before there was smartphones, there was also Rubi K'chol Ra. It was Ra in a different place. Now it's just with smartphones.
Yeah.
I believe that the main issue, it's definitely more harmful with kids, but it is also harmful for adults. But it doesn't take away how much benefit there is. And I believe that if Hashem made this tool, it's a very powerful tool. Maybe it's like an infinite tool. It's considered klipas nega, which we have to elevate.
Yeah, of course.
It's not shalosh klipas atmeis. There is things in there shalosh klipas atmeis, but
sure,
b'chira chavshis, free choice.
100%. The problem with a kid is, kid's not a baba chira yet. They don't have the ability to really.
Even a 13-year-old, a bar mitzvah kid?
I would say like this. I'd say...
That's what's tricky. I mean, you deal with high school kids. They're always in the middle.
I would say when I meet a kid who's 13 in this generation, it's not like a kid who was 13 50 years ago. It is what it is. They're just not the same, right? There's a couple ways I like to look at it. Imagine you're on a flight to Eretz Yisrael or to Brooklyn. Not the flight to Brooklyn, but you're going to New York. You're going to go be by the Rebbe's Kever, 770, daven, go under the tunnel a bit, see what's doing. And you're getting close to the end of the flight, right? 15 minutes left, right? Or your flight to Eretz Yisrael is an hour left. What happens in that hour? Do you get more excited? Do you want the time to go by faster? Or do you want the time to go by slower and you want to sit in the plane longer? I would assume most people would just want to get off that plane. Like they start to get edgy, right? Mashiach's coming, right? Time's up. It's getting edgy, right? Absolutely. It's getting hard. It's not getting easier. I'm going to do an Uno reverse card. You know Uno? You know the Uno reverse card?
So what's the reverse?
And you just do pumfa keret on the whole thing. People will say, it's so hard to be Mashiach because we don't live in the generation of great sages. The great sages of yesteryear are gone, so to speak. Of course, there's all new sages, but we haven't revealed them yet, or you don't know who they are, let's say, whatever. And people say, well, these are the giants, standing on the shoulder of giants. I'll say like this. The generations that came from, let's say, the generation of the destruction of the temple to now, right? They weren't zoche to bring the Mashiach. There's a Mashiach in every generation. There's one person who had the kalim, the ability to save all of humanity, right? The Jewish people and humanity, and bring back truth to the world on a perfect level. And it didn't happen, or hasn't happened. So what would make our generation that's so desolate spiritually, right? Judaism, being the ultimate truth in the world, is, only participated in by about 10% or less of its parishioners. Right, the frum Jews, the Jews who keep Torah and mitzvahs and Shabbos, I would say even less. Yeah. I would say less because most people don't even want to identify as who they are. But so 1 out of 10, not even, Jews care about what we're talking about. That's a low number because there isn't a billion Jews, right? The flip side is like this. In every generation, since there can be a person who can take the responsibility to save humanity, be the Mashiach. And in this generation, it's so hard to see who that could be. It's almost like, and I'd say the reverse card, it's almost like people are so far away, so they don't have that much farther to go. Meaning that we're already 49 levels maybe down. We don't even know our name anymore, like at by Mitzrayim. Mm-hmm. We're in a makam of Mitzrayim, we're in a makam of Greece, we're in a makam of Rome, we're in a makam of Persia. We're living the entire challenge of the Jewish people at once. There's now people want to call us a genocidal people, trying to do a genocide on us, living in the shadows of the Holocaust. What are we talking about over here? It's all happening in a higher, more concentrated way. It's the last 15 minutes. It's the Bein Shmashos. It's the end of time, right? It's Mariv, right? We're about to say, Mariv in the world is going to be at 6,000 years, in terms of time. So I don't want to get esoteric and spiritual and say I know what's going to happen. I'm not that guy. But I think what we're seeing is this concentration of an intense spiritual pull one way and a pull the other way. It's far more intense because we're far closer. So when you get closer to something, you get anxious, you get antsy. And I think that the Ribono Shel Olam has created a world where, first of all, the truth is becoming more absolute, right? It's very clear who our enemies are. It's very clear what treif is. Nobody's like, oh, let's go on these websites and let's look at this and feel spiritual. We know it's bad. Like you said, you go on Safari, you go on ilovechabad.org, go on chabad.org, fine. But that's not all the internet has, right? There has to be both because that's the way Hashem creates it. But I would say like this, that just as we get closer to this time period, it's going to become very, very obvious. And it's also going to become very, very divisive. People are going to go one way or the other. And the more people who are emissaries for truth in the world, the more shluchim, the more makaravim, whatever we want to call each other, give ourselves cute names, the more people who care about truth that there are, the more likely it is the more people will come with us on the wings of eagles to Eretz Yisrael and to bring with Mashiach and to have the Beis HaMikdash, right? To have the temple. The less of us that there are, the more likely is less people will come. Where do I get this from? So we know by Makos Choshech, the 9th plague, was the plague of darkness. And the plague of darkness had two purposes. One was to continue the assault on the Egyptian people, but also was to hide, right? What was it hiding? So the Almighty hid the Jews who were not going to come out of Mitzrayim. And that number is 4/5. It's 80%. That's, that was actually a better percentage than we have now that would come to Eretz Yisrael to be with Mashiach right now, which is in so much that it is scary. It's also a reality. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to say, hey, listen, at least I'm coming. At least I get to dance and sing with Mashiach? No chance. There's no way that's going to work that way. The only way we're going to be able to see the Mashiach come is if we have people coming with us, right? And the only way people are going to come with us is if we put ourselves out there and allow ourselves to be emissaries of truth and allow ourselves to be accessible and allow our homes to be open and allow us to articulate and communicate in the language of the day what the Torah is.
So that's the beauty of the internet. Is that where you're getting to? So that we're able to reach out to all Jews.
So that's, to me, that's the problem with the internet, is that if you and me and our neighbors and everybody would just take responsibility for our Dalet Amos, as they say, right? If you just took responsibility, like the Mishnah Avos says, it says in a place, Hamakom Shel Nashim, when there is no men, be a man, right? What does it mean? It means in a place where there are no people doing the job, do the job. If everybody in the Frum community would wake up, it's like waking up the sleeping giant. My Rosh Hashiva, blessed memory, Rabbi Weinberg, would call the Frum Olam, the community of Orthodox Jews, a sleeping giant. If they would just be awoken to realize what would happen if they would all take responsibility for their own Dalet Amos, not just their kids, but a few couple, the secular people that they're involved with, the people who are less affiliated, the people who need a challah, the people who need a hug, the people who need a lulav, the people who need a shoulder cry, the people who need to know that God exists. If every Frum Jew did that, right, we would have Mashiach, probably instantly, right? And that doesn't take much. In Aisha Torah, they used to go around on Friday night. I didn't go there as a bacher. I didn't go there. I was there as a married man. But the single guys would be in the dorms, and they were living in the old city of Jerusalem, right? The old city of Jerusalem is a highly protected area for many reasons, and there'd be a lot of IDF soldiers there, right, and police. And so what they would do on Friday night, because these soldiers were not able to partake in Shabbat usually, is they would come around with a big thing of grape juice and a cup, and they would go around and make kiddush for everybody. They make kiddush for every single person. Do you want kiddush, kiddush, kiddush? And they make kiddush for everybody. Why? Well, there's a halacha. Kol ravim zelazeh. If I'm doing it, everybody has to do it. I can't just do it myself. There's an idea of a robos that if I'm hearing kiddush and you're not, then I didn't really hear kiddush, right? And if Jews would really believe in these ideas and these inyanim, and they would know that their neighbor is not having kiddush tonight, or they know that their neighbor is not having a lulav, they know their neighbor is not having matzahs, they bring matzahs, they bring a lulav, they bring a challah. I have a good friend, Rabbi Hecht in Kelowna, BC, the Chabad shliach there, who saved my family. We were stuck there. The whole other story for another interview. He's an emissary. He's not there with a big Jewish community. He doesn't have a ton of people to work with, but the people he works with, he brings challahs to, and he brings tefillin to, and he brings kaddish to, and he brings a mikveh to them, right? He brings them the access so that when they desire Torah, when they desire mitzvahs, when they desire something greater, they have it, right? There's nothing greater than doing that. I mean, he did me a really nice favor. He brought my family, and we were stuck in the airport. It's a whole other story for another day. But that's why he's there. And I think the beauty of the Chabad Shliach that goes to a less Jewish community, what Mesiras Nefesh, again, there's nothing like that, right? To go somewhere where you know you're not going to have your usual Kiddush club and your friends and your shmooze. It's a very, very hard thing to do. And it's funny, at least from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like that's like the better jobs. Like,
yeah, it is.
Like put me like way up there near the equator. That's the best. Whereas it's like Chabad of Brooklyn, that guy's got an easy job. He's a lightweight. He's a lightweight. It's a rookie.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing about the Shlichus of Chabad, because they're focused on mitzvos. They're focused on making people connect. We all have a neshama. I don't believe neshamas are greater or lesser. The package and the environment and nature and nurture and the desire and being a Baal Bechira, being a person who has free will, brings out the godless, the greatness of a person. But we're all on the rudimentary level. We're a soul and a body, right? So since we're all a soul and a body, then that body requires tefillin. That body requires kosher. That body requires Shabbos, right? Because if it doesn't have it, then the soul is going to get more and more, like I said at the beginning, entangled and twisted and disconnected and schmutzed up, or however you want to describe it. It's going to become less revealed, right? The beautiful thing I would say by Purim is the nature of the story of Purim. It's called Megillas Esther, Megali, to reveal the Hester Panim, right? You're revealing the Hester Panim. Who are you revealing? You're revealing that Esther was a Jew? No, you're revealing that there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? There's like a Melech Malchei Amlachim in the world that created the world and wanted us to achieve all the greatness in the world and gave us a pleasurable existence that we have to tap into. And that tapping into is so important, but you can't tap into something you don't know exists. I know it, a person's 13, they have to be responsible. But if you're out in, B'chuppetsville, how do you know? Where are you going to get it from? So you put a Chabad guy there, you get an NCSY chapter there, you get an Esha Torah there, and all of a sudden you build people up. But what about the From world? Well, the From world, it has the tools. We have the Torah. We just have to be able to look inside of this eternal book that has all the answers and figure out what's wrong, right? All great doctors, great surgeons, they can analyze because they have so much depth of knowledge. They can say, oh, well, this goes like this and that goes like that. It's like learning Talmud, right? It's like, oh, but this and that and that. And then you find all the layers or an algebraic equation and you're just poking away at it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's how we do it, right? E equals MC squared.
So are you saying that the average religious kid has the resources to find the answers he's looking for in life?
Of course.
It doesn't seem that way.
Of course they do. They have the Torah. The Torah is available. It's more available to them than anybody.
So that's what they say, but practically people are lost. A lot of kids, teenagers, and young professionals, young adults.
Is the messaging causing them to be lost? What's causing them to be lost? On a most generic level, without a bad family situation or whatever, learning disabilities, how could the message of Torah be causing a person to be lost?
Because they weren't taught in a good way.
Right. So the mechanchim, the teachers, the schools have to look themselves in the eye and do that, that cheshbon nefesh, as we say, that accounting. I can't point a finger. I didn't grow up in the religious community, and I certainly feel a tremendous hakaras hatov to the schools for educating me on how to educate my children and educating my children in areas where I couldn't do it. So I have no problems with the schools. Are they perfect? No, but neither am I. No, there's anybody.
I think you do a great job, which again, I want to go back to more tips of Because again, teenagers are a handful, but I think you do a great job. So what are things that you hook these teenagers on? How do you hook them up? How do you and keep them?
I think the most important thing is to create an environment where you're relatable, right? And you can have a gray beard and be relatable. It's the things that come out of your mouth. It's the things that you can relate to, right? And you have to know what they're dealing with. You can't just think that they're just going to want to deal with what you're dealing with. I mean, they're not 45; they're 14. So what does a 14-year-old deal with? Well, I remember when I was 14, I know what I was thinking about. So it wasn't so long ago that I forgot what 14-year-olds look like. I work with 14-year-olds. I see them all the time. So when I talk to a 14 or 15-year-old kid, I break it down. What are you interested in? Sports, video games, this, that, whatever it is. Let's get to know you. Like I said before, the most beautiful word in the world is your name. Let's get to know Tom. Let's get to know Sally, right? Who are you?
So that's the hook. The first thing is
making them feel like they're important. Making a person feel like they're important is the greatest thing you can do for them, by far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the greatest thing you can do.
Also needs it's not just in the beginning. It also needs constant feeding.
Right. There's a book by Rabbi Kellerman called Permission to Receive. Right. Just the word permission to receive. It's so beautiful, right? Because people need to give you permission in order for them to receive something. I mean, that a person who wants to learn Torah will come learn Torah. I don't have to chase them. They're going to chase me. I meet a person who doesn't have Torah. What's my pitch? What's my pitch? I can't pitch them on something they don't care about. Oh, there's this thing called shotness. Yay. Kilayim. Yay. Right? What do you care? They don't care. What do they get? Right? What do you get? So NCSY, we give them a sense of who are you? Who are you? Right? Like, what's your name? Where do you go to school? Cool. You go to Westmount? Awesome. You have that teacher? Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we're doing this program called Learn and Earn. You get $10. There's some sushi. You want to come? You'll meet a mentor. I can even learn with you. I have time. Sure, let's try it out. I mean, listen, one time, sit down with me and we open a book. Derech Hashem, we open a book. Right? Or we open something they want to read. Oh, I want to read something that I think is interesting. Or it's not even Jewish. Let's talk about something random, for a bit. If you give them that opening to feel that they matter, if you give them that opening to feel like they count, if you give them that opening to feel like they have a worth, a self-worth, in a world where maybe they don't, then I think that that's your number one thing that you should work on. Having a great sales pitch in business is obviously very important. You can never get the sales pitch if no one opened the door. And NCSY, we open the door. And then the pitch comes next. Now, some people will come, again, like some people come, you go to a Chabad shul and guys will show up, right? I remember at Esha Torah, we had something called came for Kaddish, stayed for Kiddush. You know what I mean? They had a reason to come. And then they ended up becoming more frum because they stayed and they learned and they grew and they had Kiddush and they had herrings. And shout out to Geschmacka Herring, the homie. That guy's amazing. I don't know if you interviewed him yet, but he's a good guy. The Geschmack Herring guy, Lirbach. You know this guy? That is a guy's Instagram. He's a guy's amazing. He's a funny guy. Amazing guy. Loves Chabad. He's a Chabad guy. But I think that's so important, no? I mean, who cares? Like, I'm teaching a class, like at a university professor. I have 400 students. I don't know any of these people, right? They'll come to, professor. Who are you? I don't know who you are, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's because they're in a relationship where I have the information they want, right? Mm-hmm. But if a person doesn't know that the information I have is what they want, I first have to convince them they want the information. And how do you do that? You make a person open up. Make a person feel at home. You make a person feel like they're part of your family, right? There's nothing better than when a student comes to my house and opens my fridge. Because now they feel like they're at home, right? Go have a drink. Sure, no problem. Yeah, just go to the fridge, go get it yourself. You're a part of the family here. I have students who come here, part of the family, sleep over, they hang out, part of the family, right? I think that's our job, right? Because the Torah, obviously, we have. We're going to give them the Torah. Hopefully we're able to communicate it in a way that's connectable for them. But you can't get to that point if they don't connect to you. It won't work, right? You got the wrong plug for the USB.
Is that the only thing, or is there more?
I think it's the main thing.
The main thing, the foundation.
I think it's the main thing. If you you break that boundary down, you break that barrier down, and then you have the opportunity to really do a lot of work. Now, where do you go with a person? I think it depends. I think people struggle with the idea that there is a belief in belief. Like, we believe in believing in Judaism.
Oh, they make fun of that. Like, why are you you just brainwashed? They say brainwashed.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if your brain is dirty, you should wash it. So there's nothing wrong with brainwashing, but let's leave that out of it. We put the cult in culture. But in reality, the fact that Torah is translated, the fact that I'm like, here's the book. We're chavrusas. You have your copy and I have my copy. Let's go. Let's read. Read it in English. Don't worry about Hebrew. We'll learn Hebrew another day. That's opan. It's not my class. Read the Hebrew. Read the English. Okay, let's see what it says. You got a problem with that? Okay, let's argue. Where's your sources? Where's your insights, right? Torah learning is a very beautiful thing. It's a very loud experience. It's not a library where you're like, shh, you're flipping through the books. You're sitting, talking, you're learning, you're steiging, you're arguing. It's beautiful because it says like in Navos, if you're arguing for truth, it's a good argument. If you're arguing for sheker, for ego, it's a bad argument. But if a person's sitting there struggling with truth and I don't believe in God, but you believe in God, and you seem so smart. Like I heard one person say to me, I'm not saying I'm smart, but a person said to me, you're so smart. Why do you believe in God? It doesn't make sense. Right? You're too smart for that, right? I'm like, oh, you want to know want to know how it works? And we sat for like an hour, and the person was okay. Listen, they couldn't debate. We weren't holding at the same level. But one thing they said after is like, even though I didn't have answers for you, I didn't feel like you were trying to put me down. And, meaning that I didn't feel like I was losing the argument, even though I had a different opinion. And I think that's the beautiful thing when you engage somebody who's engaged, right? When you see that they want, you have to go. You have to go in. Go for the kill, as they say. Go for the neshama, right? But you don't get access if you are self-centered, if you're doing it for yourself, if you're doing it for altruistic reasons, if you don't ask your Father in heaven for help. I tell all the advisors, okay, listen to me. I tell everybody, you have one partner. That's the Almighty, who wants this more than you will ever want it. The Almighty wants His children back. He wants us to dance in Mashiach. He wants us to do karbanos in the Beis HaMikdash. It will not happen if you don't ask the Almighty for help. You can't have that schus. You can't have that merit because your Father in heaven is your number one partner. He's the CEO. So if you don't ask Him for help, if you're not speaking to the Almighty daily, you're not davening, and you're not davening for your students, you're not davening for your family, you're not davening, okay, go for it. Do what you got to do, but I don't think you're going to be successful. Not in the long run.
You mentioned davening a lot, and it's actually a topic for itself. You don't find that a lot of religious Jews are struggling with davening?
I mean, in the world that I live in, I go to kollel. A lot of people really love davening. To be honest with you, we have a long davening. In the kollel I was in before the one I'm in now, they liked it even more. It was long davening. It was beautiful. We had lots of time. The Rosh Kollel, that I was at when I lived at Bathurst and Lawrence, would daven very long and very passionate, emotional davening. And just watching him davening would be like a davening. It was like watching him pray would be like, okay, I think I'm getting some like juice off of this, right? Do people struggle with davening? I'm sure they do in some worlds, in some communities. Thankfully, the community that I'm in, I feel like it's a good community. They daven well. The beautiful thing is you come to the kollel in Thornhill on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and it's like 50-50 grown-ups and kids because everybody's got lots of bachram, lots of boys, and the boys are learning these songs in cheder, and they can sing along with the chazan, and it's the same niggin, so everybody knows it, and it's so loud and it's so beautiful and it's so inspiring, and it makes your davening better. The one thing we do in our house over here is, we again, when we pray, we don't, just go, okay, I'm praying, but we let our kids know, we have to say Shema at night, we have to daven. Did you daven today, right? Did you talk to your Creator? We don't just say it like, open up a book and read some words, but like you're talking to Almighty. You had a bad day yesterday or something's not happening in school. Did you ask Almighty? You talk to Him? He's your partner. Talk to Him. Don't even open a sitter. Just talk to Him. Have a conversation. Talking to the wall? Okay, you're talking to the wall, but you're talking. More people have to realize that and learn about tefillah. I don't know, where and when and how, people have lost their way with tefillah. But I know, thankfully, the people that I'm around like to daven and they pray fervently and they know what they're saying and they know the words and it makes it a more authentic experience for those around you who then will be inspired by what they see and what they're hearing. So I think it's a very important when you daven to be in a place where people are very serious about it. Not chatting, not schmoozing, not as soon as they step 3 backs and just right into hockey scores, right? People are panimistic. People who are really, connecting. It's very important people to put your kids around also if you want to relate it to chinuch.
Right. It seems to be that you kind of were always surrounded by people who davened well. That's
I'm lucky.
You're lucky.
Yeshu Torah, and people are very passionate.
It's very fortunate. Yeah. So is there anything else? Any other tips?
I mean,
You make it sound so simple.
well, first of all, it's not. That's why there's so much to say. And certainly I wouldn't say to anybody who's looking to work in outreach to just jump into a career without getting due diligence and to understand what it takes to do the work. I do think people need to have a strong hashkafa at home, a strong family. I think going into outreach full-time when you're single is not the best idea, especially if you do it with real like secular kids because you're working with boys and girls usually. I think it's very important to be married. I think it's very important to have a seder of learning. I think it's very important to have a seder of tefillah, a very strong support system and a committed understanding of what the scope of the work is going to be. But I would say that my advice to people who work with kids is it's not simple. They're not simple. They're complicated creatures. Any psychologist will tell you that. And any psychologist will tell you that the rates of suicidality, the rates of not feeling good about themselves, of self-loathing, of feeling disconnected, of being exposed to things that are very, very confusing for a young developing mind are increasing rapidly, again, with the internet, right? It is what it is. So therefore, you have to be more equipped, right? You have to have more tools. You know, Batman, he has all kinds of tools, right? And something comes up and he throws a thing at you, or he throws at this, or James Bond, they have a lot of tools because there's something for every situation. So if you're going to work in a world with what the world is today, you got to be ready for every situation. You got to be ready for them to talk about X, Y, and Z issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or XY chromosome, XX chromosome, if you get what I'm saying. You got to be ready for that, and you have to be equipped to give them an answer that will not only satiate them but not alienate it. Because when you alienate somebody, or you say, "Oh, they're gross," or "They're not a part of this," or "They're not welcome here," so then you tell the kid, "Well, you're not welcome here either," right? How can a person who does this avera not be welcome, but you don't keep Shabbos, you're allowed to come, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be very, very careful what we're saying to people. You have to be very sensitive. I happen to be not so sensitive. Like I grew up in the 80s. You say what you want, right? But I've learned, thankfully, with my training out, to be honest, in NCSY training, a lot of training, to not just sensitize myself to the needs of these kids, but to realize they're going through a lot. Maybe more than I ever went through. And if I know that, then I know what I'm dealing with. If I don't think that, if I have some sort of altruistic, me-focused thing where it's like, well, I want to do this with you, and I want you to do it my way, I don't think you're going to be successful. You have to meet them at their level. Rav Shach, the great, going Gadol B'Torah, Gadol Hador from the last generation, in his Haggadah, talks about, he was talking about kashrus, Haggadah, immersing into a pot, very boring stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But he had an interesting analogy. He said, when you kosher a spoon that's not kosher for Pesach, anyways, when you take out the blias of the of whatever. So you put it in a big boiling pot of water, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say it's unkosher. You put it in the pot of water, it becomes kosher or usable, right? Mm-hmm. What happens if it's reversed? What if you take a kosher spoon and you take a pot of treif and you put the kosher spoon in? What happens to the spoon? What happens to the pot? Does it kosher the food that's inside or treif the spoon? You put a spoon into a pot of treif, pot of chazer.
It's
the spoon's done. It's boiling hot. Spoon's done. Treif. Yeah. So you are that spoon. And this world is that pot of treif. You can't just go into the pot, right? The great rabbi, Rav David Grossman, who is, read his book, From Migdal Emek, Migdal Or. He had the orphanage, and he's known as the Disco Rebbe. His wife is a Chabad Chassid. You should know this, very, very well known. And he's a Yushalmi. Used to go into the discotheques, right? But he wouldn't dress like a guy in a discotheque. He wore the lavush of a chassid. He wore his long coat, and he had his long beard. He didn't have a dark beard at the time, and his up hat. He'd walk into a discotheque, right, with like people on drugs and drunk, right? He kept himself kosher, right? He made sure he was kosher, and he went into an environment where he never reduced himself to being like in the environment, because as soon as he would do that, he'd become treif, right? We have to realize that in the world that's not kosher, right? If we're going to be kosher, we can't dunk ourselves into the proverbial pot. We can't immerse ourselves in what they're immersing themselves in order to be like them. We can go where they go, but we can't be what they are. If a person's listening to inappropriate things or looking at inappropriate things, we can't do that just to be their friend, just to be their buddy. And we can't validate things that are not good for a person. So you can't say, well, you looking at that is okay for you, but just not for me because I'm religious. So then what connection am I ever going to have? It's you do this and I do this. What we have to do, and in chinuch, I think what you do is you allow a person to give you all the information. You let them say who they are, and you don't put them down, but you don't build that up. You don't put them down for doing it, but you don't build it up either. You don't make it mutter. You don't make it okay, right? And I think if we focused on building them up, it would be a lot easier to pull them out of the mud than if we talk about the mud that they're in all the time, right? You pull a person out of something, you're not reminding them of what they're in, because if they are reminded of it, they're going to be scared.
How does that? Give an example.
So I think the best thing is when a person, again, is a person is not keeping kosher and is sitting there and talking about eating their cheeseburger to you. That's great. I make parv cheeseburgers. You want to try one? I'm not saying, oh yeah, McDonald's the best. Yeah, I'll be tough. I keep kosher. It's you're poisoning your body. What do you mean? Okay, you enjoy this, but let's slowly work your way out of it. Maybe next time, instead of getting a cheeseburger, just get a hamburger at McDonald's. Right? Okay, maybe that's controversial. Maybe he's going to eat it anyways. Get a hamburger. Maybe next time you get a hamburger, get a fillet of fish. It's part. I don't know. It's cooked in some kind of animal oil. Next time you go, just get the fries. Next time you go there, just get a Coke, because you need to go into McDonald's because that's your thing. And eventually it won't be your thing, right? Ease them out of it, right? You pull them slowly out of the quicksand, right? Because if you pull them too fast, you can break a limb, right? Pull someone out of a bad, let's say they're stuck in a chair and you just rip them out of it, right? Their leg will break. But if you slowly maneuver them and you take them out slowly, they'll get out okay. And I think that's what we have to do with our kids. We have to not realize, I don't know, it's a bad marshal, but Rome is not built in a day, right? Beis Hamikdash is not built in a day. Rome was not built in a day. Beis Hamikdash is not built in a day. But if we take it step by step, you will see that they will untangle themselves. Like I said at the beginning, just going to untangle themselves, and they'll figure it themselves out. Once you're untangled and you feel free, you're not going to dive yourself back into that bad spot, right? Yeah. I once seen some weird video where the sheep is stuck, and the farmer goes and he pulls the sheep out of some gully, right? And the sheep's jumping around. It's like, okay, the sheep's safe, and then he just turns around and jumps back into it. It's a sheep, it's an animal, right? Person will do the same thing. If you pull them out, right, they'll just jump back in. But if you slowly take them out and you ease them out, they'll be okay. And I think that's why getting to know them, starting off where they are, right? Meet them at their level. You meet them at their level. You teach them on their level. Each person's different. They're all one neshama, but it comes out in different ways, right? The shell is different on everybody, but the root is the same. So if you understand the shell a little bit, we'll get to the root a lot quicker. When you don't understand the shell, you can't get to the root, and you can't deal with it, right? I don't know if that works, Marshall. A lot of Marshalls.
That's good. Shalom are very good. Are there more tips?
I don't know. I try. I don't know.
You've been doing, for you, it's already like a habit. Like you don't have to think about it. I'm sure didn't they train you these things, and now it just became habit?
I'm a sponge. I don't think I have a lot of great skills. Sponge.
Okay, yeah.
I was trained, but I was around a rabbi who really gave it over the way I would give it over. I was like, wow, this guy says it like I want to. I would say it like he says it. And over the years, I've been lucky enough to realize how little I know about people, how little I know in Torah, how little I know about how to help shape a person. And because of that, I think I get the opportunity to really have to tune in and listen and hone myself. And for me, learning a Gemara is a lot harder than the average person. So I have to really concentrate, and I have to really go a little slower, and I have to really focus, right? All the more so with my work, knowing that my ultimate goal is to help a person break out of their slumber. And I know that if I screw up, if I alienate them, if I anger them, and I do, you gotta understand, I am not anywhere close to great at this. I'm trying very hard all the time. Then I know if any mistake is going to be a casualty, right? This is a very important job and is a very important role. And a person who has the merit to do it should take it very seriously, just like any job, right? If you have a job and you get paid and you make a living, you should take it seriously. There's halachas about it. You have to take a job seriously. You can't have bittul zman. You can't waste time. And because we're on basically the evening prayers of the end of time, all the more so, the more people we bring, the greater the dancing with Mashiach will be. The party will be a lot greater. It'll be very sad and happy, because we'll have Mashiach, that 90% of people are not going to dance with us. That would be sad. I think that'd be heartbreaking.
By the way, there's thing from the Rebbe about Pesach that even though from Mitzrayim 4/5 didn't come, but to make it short, when the Rasha says if you were there you wouldn't be redeemed, so the Lubavitch Rebbe has a vart that if he was in Mitzrayim he wouldn't be redeemed, but now he would. So I'm not sure if there's different opinions about it, but I'm not sure you heard that?
Could be.
I
don't know. I hope so.
But the Rebbe doesn't say, oh, so therefore you don't have to do Shlichus.
No, right.
He says continue doing Shlichus, and it almost sounds like the Rebbe says what you're saying, that if you don't do it, then they're not going to be joining us. I think that every Jew will be joined no matter what, but they may be like embarrassed that they didn't do any mitzvahs. They feel like, so I think that's like the compromise.
Wouldn't it be sad if at a Shabbos table I put out a $1,000 bottle of scotch, right? $1,000, crazy 25-year-old, 30-year-old Macallan, something, whatever. And, a guest comes by and this is a very special bottle, right? And you have to take it, to drink it a certain way and to appreciate such a beautiful bottle, right? And I explained to them, this is a very beautiful bottle and, you have to drink it slowly and you add a little water and this and that and the whole process. And the guy comes and he sees it. He takes his shot and takes a glass of Coke and pours it on top and goes, L'chaim, and he just shoots it back, right? What a waste, right? I think that's the parable also. Yeah, you're right. People will chaparine, but they won't realize what they're getting. They don't realize it. They won't realize how special it is. Because in order to connect, you have to be, my Shiva would say, a connoisseur, right? Like a person who really knows, like a wine connoisseur, right? A person who's a wine connoisseur, a sommelier, they come at the restaurant, they give the wine on the scarf, or
professional.
Yeah, but they talk about the wine on such a deep level, right? So too the Torah Kadosha, right? The Holy Torah. The more a person knows about it, the more special of even Mashiach comes for them. And maybe that's also the sad thing, is that even if they get to come, maybe they won't hop around and dance. Maybe they won't have the chant. Right. It's going to be Lag BaOmer soon. We're going to be dancing by the Rashbi's kever. 250,000 people. Okay, I won't be there. I'm going to be here. I'll be dancing in Earl Bell's Park or something. But 250,000 people are going to be dancing by the Rashbi's kever because, the Zohar and Rashbi, right? But if you don't know and you're there, you might dance, but you're not going to get the same geschmack as a person who taka knows why he's there, right? And I think that's a very important thing, is that, yes, Baruch Hashem, we're all part of Klal Yisrael. And yes, it says at the beginning of Avos, Kol Yisrael yesh lechem chelik le'olam haba. Okay, but it's a chelik, it's a portion. You never have a pie, right? You come to the house for Shabbos, you want a piece of pie? Sure. So I try to give everybody equal piece. But how do you know you're going to get the same piece as the next guy? It's a chelik, it's a portion. How big's your portion? How big's my portion? Yeah, you're going to Olam Haba. Where are you going to sit? In the front row, or are you going to sit in the bleachers?
Right, exactly.
Right? So it's okay. I'd rather be in the bleachers with Mashiach. You're right. But I think that our job is to help people get that better quality seat, to be connoisseur, and to realize that the pleasure of Torah is the greatest pleasure you can have. The pleasures of the znus and the things that they're seeing are the Yitzhar Alein. It's the Yitzhar is driving them away. And I think the more we show them the beauty of Torah, the Torah HaKadosha, then I think we're gonna set some unbelievable records over here. We're gonna turn the tide. We're gonna flip the Uno card, and it's gonna be 90-10. 90% are gonna come dance with Mashiach, and 10 are gonna be, God forbid, lost. But maybe we'll get 100. I don't know. But we got to start somewhere. It starts with one neshama, one person. You do one, and now you get two. Like my Rosh Hashiva said, you get Aleph. Okay, so do Aleph. Then then you chop base, you get base. You get a Talmud. Right, make someone a Talmud.
Now you know something, so
right.
Give it to someone else.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know it's not your field, but do you know more details about this new division for people? I'm not sure what you called it, but the division where for religious kids who are going up who are struggling.
In Sparks?
Yeah, like what more details about it?
Yeah,
how they do it.
Sure. The premise is that kids are falling off the derech. The vehicle is going to be the same NCSY that we provide for our teens, obviously with the focus on the needs of a religious kid who has a little bit more knowledge of Torah. Maybe doesn't know how to learn Gemara, maybe doesn't know Halacha, maybe feels a disdain, right? But certainly is more versed in Judaism and Jewish life. Giving them that, and I think the word sparks is the best word, giving them that opportunity to have fun and be Jewish, to put on tefillin and then go to Sky Zone, right? To have a tefillin chat,
How do they find How do they get involved?
So I mean,
What's
there's day schools. How do they get involved? That I can have to speak to Rabbi Black, but we have somebody in the schools who works with the kids, Noam Sonnenberg, a couple other people that are involved. But I think the key is to give them a geschmack, something joyous with the things that they consider mundane and boring, which might be tefillin, might be davvening, it might be Shabbos. There might be an oneg Shabbos with go to a baseball game, or again, these are kids who would otherwise be, God knows doing whatever they're doing, and depraving themselves and making themselves go lower and lower and lower. So at least we're holding them right now, right? Mm-hmm. We're holding them at a level, and hopefully once we hold them at a level and we're bekesher, we can start to build them up.
Pretty much the same thing, just more catered to...
Exactly. You just have to work on their level. Again, it's the same thing. Is there a
base? Like, do they have like a...
No. I mean, they do stuff at the Bayit. They do stuff in people's homes. It really, we have great supporters. And it's building. There's a pro and con to it. The fact that it is a need is sad, right? Because you think the schools...
Should be enough.
Should be enough. But as we know, in this day and generation, and quite frankly, the last generations, there's always a challenge. So since there's going to be a challenge, there has to be someone who's up for the challenge. And maybe the school doesn't have the resources, or they don't realize that they should.
Why don't they just, instead of making another system,
just have one in their schools?
Yeah, basically integrate Sparks more into the school itself, so you don't have to have like a separate...
Don't get me started. I don't want to say. Listen, the schools have a hard time with what they have. They have to run a school. I'm not excusing them. I'm not pointing a finger or anything, because I feel that I'm on a level where I can ascertain that I know better than people who have much more experience and much more Torah knowledge than me. I would just say that, as someone who's worked in the schools as well as in an outreach and organization, it's very difficult running a school and running an organization and keeping everybody paid and keeping everybody happy and hiring people with the right hashkafas and imbuing the right hashkafas. There's so many variables. And then if you work in a community that there are people who are coming from different backgrounds and different levels of exposure, and the home doesn't match, again, the home doesn't match the school, like I said, there's myriads of reasons, learning disabilities, all sorts of things, not fitting into the box of Gemara learner, whatever it is, sneas, name it. Because that exists, I'm not saying the schools can't, it's just that it's a very daunting challenge, and the monies are thin. And yeah, if they had, the extra few $100,000 and they had the need and they hired a team of people to just be, and they do have people, like I know one that, one of my sons, my young sons at his cheder, he had a hard day and the Rebbe took him for a slice of pizza, right? Just took him first, didn't learn a Gemara with him, just said, you need to go for a slice of pizza. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's what you need to do sometime, but you might not have enough people who have that time or have that headspace, right? But I do think that it's a need that shouldn't be a need, but since it is a need and we are able to do it, so let's do it. Rabbi Black, he started this organization and he's doing it. And I think it takes big shoulders to do such a thing. But also I think a person has to realize that, I'm responsible, right? And when a person takes responsibility for something, you have to take responsibility for all of it. You can't be responsible for a family and not pay the bills, take care of your wife. You have to do all of it. You have to be responsible. When a person sees Klal Yisrael floundering in an area and it's very obvious to you, then maybe that's because the Eibusher is telling you it's your problem. You got to deal with it. I think that's the godless of the Sparks program, is that it's working on a need. Why is the need in existence? Well, I think it's always been in existence. Is it the school's fault? No, I can't blame anybody. But we're here and we know what we're doing, so we're going to do it, right? That's it, right? We got to do it, right? We got to be in Kelowna, British Columbia. We got to do it. So here's Rabbi Hechta's out there. We got to be at Western. Here's Rabbi Silver. He's got to be there. That's it. There's no Shiloh. You just got to be there. That's it. There's Jews. We got to be there. The Jews are in trouble. Well, we got to be there for them. That's it. Right? It's like Sahal. Jews in trouble. We can get mobilized. Let's go. People are trying to kill our people. Let's go. Right? They do it on a physical level, and here we are trying on a spiritual level. It's mitakein all the different things that are going on in the world with people, spiritually, physically, and it's a disaster. So we have to do it. Somebody has to take responsibility for this. And if you can do it, you have the koach. Obviously, Bali Tshuva have a tremendous advantage because they came from that world. They were, living in that existence for whatever amount of years. So they can be much more relatable to the challenges or the transition from going from non-kosher to kosher, from no Shabbos to Shabbos, from no learning to learning, right? Who better? That doesn't mean the B'nai Aliyah can't even give more insight with their greater knowledge of Torah, but they have to be able to realize that you're not talking to other, from a Yidden, you're talking to a Fry Yid, a person who's not.
It's interesting. There are two types of non-religious people. So maybe it seems by teenagers, they just want relatability. That's the main thing. And I agree with that. Maybe it's just with adults, because I've done a little bit of outreach. I've noticed that it's almost the opposite, where the holier tzaddik you are, the more they respect you. And even the relatability is almost like a weakness.
Yes, because they're not looking to be related to, because they're adults, right? They have things, they have families, they have friends, they have children and wives, and even if they're just about on the bridge of that, they're looking for meaning and purpose, because they found you because their life is lacking meaning and purpose, right? Again, person loses a loved one and comes to shul for Kaddish, right? They're lacking something, right? Person is 30 years old, not married, looking for something, right? They found you, right? There is a greater sense of a greater lack of identity, and therefore a greater need to help them cultivate some sort of higher purpose, right? Whereas a kid doesn't have, there's nothing going on yet, right? Like a 30-year-old just is like, okay, what do I do with myself for the next 40, 50 years, right? So yeah, they're going to want to learn Torah. They're going to want to be with a sage. They're going to want to hear the good stuff. That's another thing, when I worked at Jump, people always wanted to hear the good stuff, right? They didn't want, don't sugarcoat it, Rabbi, give me the good stuff, right? But that doesn't mean they're going to do it. They just want to hear it. I always said the worst job, the worst position you can put yourself in with your students is to be their Jeopardy rabbi, just answering their questions, right? Meaning that when a person asks me a shaila because they're going to keep halacha, it's the greatest. I daven every day. Please Hashem, give me shilas. But a person just asks you, you can see they're just trying to figure it all out, so they can just hear it, and then they just literally take that information, back pocket, it's gone, and they move on. That's not your job. Person generally wants to learn. They're inquisitive. They want to grow. Of course, teach them everything, Aleph all the way up. But if a person's just, I don't want to say using you, but if a person's just trying to stump you or whatever, okay, it's cute, have at it, go for it. But to me, that's always sad, because that's not what I want. I don't want a relationship where all I do is answer random questions every now and then. I want to hang out. I want to do Shabbos. I want you to see it in practice. Teaching a person about Shabbos and never eating challah and kiddush and pickles and filter fish, and you don't have a Shabbos? Okay, maybe not filter fish, but come on, it's crazy, right? Why would you learn about challah? You took a class on braiding challah and you never eat challah? Okay, unless you're gluten-free. You got to eat the challah, right? It's crazy. You did a challah bake, you baked the challah and you just threw it out? No, you're supposed to eat it, fool.
Why do people have that desire to just learn and not?
It's Google. Again, it comes back to the internet. This generation is like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. They're not inquiring to know to do. They're inquiring to know because they want to know. Because knowing is also a thing, right? I know. Okay, great. I have a lot of people.
I'm saying on the contrary, it used to be a cool thing to know, because
what I mean is,
before Google, you couldn't just ask Google. But now, if you know these crazy information, it's like, oh yeah, duh. Because
they might not know how to ask. You see people today, poskening shilas, right? What are they poskening shilas on? What Israel should do with its military. I didn't know you were a military general. I didn't know you spent time in the armed force. Oh wait, you're just on your couch. What are you talking about? People will give you their opinions on matters that are well beyond the scope. Now, of course, everybody can say what they want, do what they want, but today you can put a post and you can make a website and you can make a video or a TikTok or this, that, and millions of people are going to see your garbage trash views, right? Because you know better, right? I think that aspect of knowledge is very dangerous. And the generation that we're in prefers to get their knowledge from TikTok, Instagram, a random, very light Google search where the first thing is just something that's paid and wasn't even really, than actually ask an authentic person. The flip side of what I'm saying is I just don't like when people just ask me questions and don't want to get to know me and get to know about the mitzvahs and stuff like that. I find that to be something I'll do. I'm available for a tish or whatever, I'll talk. But I just think that type of rabbi relationship with the students never leads anywhere, because you're just a question answerer for them. You're not a person, right? Again, it's great to have the answers. It's great to have people inquiring, but are they going anywhere? Like when a person asks me about Nagia, and then they ask me about, Israel, and they ask me about Mashiach and end of days and heaven and hell, and like
all the hot topics.
It's like, bro, like, okay, let's, anytime, but like, come for Shabbos and we can ask all these questions together. We can sit and have a meal and be mentions and talk. But if someone just trying to, keep, pressing Google search over and over again on me, I'll just tell them, like, listen, anytime you want, we can sit down and learn about one of these topics in depth, but I'm not going to just give you, as they call, a poo-poo platter of a little bit of everything for the sake of your own desire for me to like press the button and make the guy talk. I'm a human being. I have a limit. So everybody's got limits. It's very hard. Very hard.
How much people? You get this a lot. Like how much? Or you used to get? I used
to with the young professionals. I would get it a lot. They wouldn't change. They would desire knowledge, but not with change in application.
Interesting. So it's something about adults that they just want knowledge.
Well, they're smarter, and they because they're coming to the highest source for the highest knowledge. They're going to the rabbi. They want to know the deepest things. A high school kid has maybe less deep questions at first, anyways. By the way, that deepens tremendously after a couple of years, or even sometimes right away. But they're going to build a relationship with you. That after 4 years, Rabbi JR is my rabbi. Rabbi JR is going to help me figure out university gap year. And that person is going to have a better chance at having better decisions later in life because they stuck to a path, they stuck to a mentor, they stuck to a derech. And I think it's very, very important. That's also why NCSY is very good with our gap year. Like we have all these, we know of all the different programs. Our gap year coordinators go out to Israel and go to the different schools and check them out and get to know the rabbis and get to know the past students so that when we are giving advice to somebody, it's not just random advice, but it's actually informed advice, meaning that we know the information. We're not just saying, oh, this one's close to the market, so you'll be able to get shawarmas. No, this place is good for you, and this place would be good for you, and that place would be good for you, but you should go over there, right? Having that informed relationship is so helpful for our students, and I think it's very crucial, right? And that, again, as I was saying about the young professionals, not that they're bad, but they're not making it, they've informed themselves and they're just looking for information, not to be informed. I guess it's a better way of looking at it.
Even if they started before, or if that's the first exposure is young professionals.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, a guy's 30 years old. Like, where is he going with his life? Let's stop intermarriage, right? That's our, our goal. Let's stop intermarriage. The idea, other than them going to yeshiva, very, very limited. 30-year-old person with a job, and you can't just stop. A 15-year-old who has a year after high school, they can just go to gap year. Why not? They're going to pay for university anyways. Go to gap year. Spend a year living in Israel. Mature a bit. Grow a bit. Get that fire. So that even if you only do 1 year, you'll come back and you'll be able to apply it. You'll be able to do Shabbos. You'll be able to do kosher. You know how to make a bracha. Very valuable things, right? Put on tefillin. Putting on tefillin every day for a year, it's very important. Go to gap year. You do it for a year. Right? And then maybe they go for Shana Bet. 2 years. Woo! Shana Gimel, Daled, hey, and they're living, living and learning. It's unbelievable. We have people like that. Halavai, I wish all of them, but
I guess you really see the fruit of your labor, and they're so, you can really find the right word, like to craft them when they're high school age. Like they're ready to be open. They want a relationship. They want help. So you really could, and they're like full of energy, ready to change.
I think the key is to mold them into the best version of themselves, but into the best version of themselves, not the best version of you. Sometimes I think people think it's better that, do as I do, but it's not so pashut. It's not so black and white, literally and figuratively.
I think that's what they do in schools.
I'm saying that when I look at a student, I try to think of what would be best for them. I try to get to know them, know what they're good at and what they like, and get to a little bit of nature and nurture out of them. And then I say to them, oh, you'd be good at Or Sameach Derech, or you'd be good in Eish Gesher, or you would be good in Machon Mayan, or you would go good in Merot. I owe it to them to choose or help them choose things that are good for them, not what I did, where I went, what I liked, right? I went a certain way and I had a certain thing that I liked. I will tell you what I did and I can inform you about it, but I can't espouse that you want to be exactly like me. And if you do, great. So, okay, that's your loss, but we'll work on it. But I want my students to be the best versions of themselves, right? We were all standing at Har Sinai together. It wasn't just one guy. It was Ish Echad Belev Echad. We were like a nation with one heart. So since that's the case, then everybody gets to choose what they want, because either or deep down inside, we're all one nation with one heart. So let them do it their way, right? Let them go on their path, but let that be a good emistic path, right? if they want to go to seminary, if they want to go to this, choose a place that's good for them. Choose a lifestyle that's going to be good for them. Some people would be better off being more affiliated with, let's say, a more Haredi environment. But some people would really not do well with that, right? Some people need to have a more relaxed environment, or maybe a different community that would suit them well. You have to know. You have to know what the communities have to offer. You have to know the shuls, the rabbis, what it looks like, what their job and there's a lot to it. You're building a person. You're helping build a person with their parents and themselves. So you got to make sure you're making the right decisions. You have to be informed. So people who are in a kiruv need to know what's going on around them. Obviously, if you're in an outpost, you're in Cincinnati, or in some random place, you have what you have. In a city like Toronto, we're blessed.
You have a lot of options.
Lots of ways to do it and to be successful and to serve the Almighty. Yivdu es Hashem b'simcha, to serve the Almighty with joy. There's lots of ways to do it here. So you got to find a way.
So, you still can go for longer?
I'm dead. Okay. It's only because my throat goes.
Okay. So maybe we can just, any last message you want to tell?
I'd say like this. Whatever you're doing and however you're doing it, make sure you have a mentor to help you make it amazing. You want to be an accountant, you need a mentor. You want to be a great doctor, you need a mentor. If you want to be a great Jew, the Mishnah says, Seilach harav, you have to have a rabbi, you have to have a mentor, you have to have someone in your life who can give you eitzah. That's for a person who's growing as a frum Jew. I would say like this though, for those who are working in outreach or want to reach others and share Torah with them, whether you're a shliach, whether you're a kiruv person, whatever these terms are, I think the most important thing in my years of experience with the students is to meet them head on, get to know them. Like I said, you get to know someone's name, you get to know who they are, what their family is about, what they love, their favorite ice cream, their favorite coffee. On their birthday, you call them, you buy them a coffee. You will get so far with them. And yes, teaching them amazing Torah is amazing, and knowing a lot of Torah is important. But you'll never get to the point where you can share that amazing Torah if you can't have a vessel that wants to receive it. And the only way to get a vessel that wants to receive it and be open, I think the most important thing at the end of the day is to have a connection. And if we work on that connection and realize that we're all together at Har Sinai at one point, then we'll be at the time of Mashiach, also at the next time, that we're all together as a nation, Ki shachad belev achad with Mashiach, Tzidkenu b'mehera v'yameinu.
Thank you, JR, or Reb JR, Rabbi JR.
We do it for the kids.
For your time,
do it for the kids.
Yeah, Bezat Hashem is to help bring Mashiach.
You're the man. Thanks, homie.